We have a very special guest today, Dougie Fischer, editor-in-chief of Ring Magazine, boxing mastermind, commentator, great family man, great guy. And I'm joined with my boy, Kevin Perry, and we're going to unpack what has happened and transpired in the first half of the boxing calendar year that is 2022. Kevin, let's hit it.
Unbelievable! You want to throw sometime? Bang! Oh, my God! Okay, Chip. 7 rounds to 2.
Hey, Doug, how's it going, man?
It goes well. I like that intro. I love your energy. I wish I had like 10% of that. Just 10%. That's all I need. That would just like
a lot of energy from John as usual.
Yes, that's why we love him. Yeah,
but he's
kind of the I'm the yin and he's the yang. So,
yes, you need that balance. Absolutely,
definitely. Yeah, I'm kind of the more mellow guy, and but I got my moments.
It's like commentators. It's like a broadcast booth, right?
Yeah,
you couldn't have two Mauro Ronaldos, right? That would not work. That would be that'd be crazy. But
I'd like to see him try it though.
Just for experiment. Yeah,
yes,
just for shits and giggles. Exactly. But no, you need balance, right? You need I feel like the play-by-play or the blow-by-blow or the host has got to have that energy to bring people in and get the excitement up, and then the color commentator and the analyst, they can get excited when something exciting happens, in real time. But I think that they need to be a little bit more settled, and that's just the balance,
I think that's why Lampley and Merchant were so good.
Yeah.
And with Mo Ronaldo, like what I loved one time, something really stood out. He's like the carpenter and the dentist. They're going tooth and nail when he was explaining the fight. I'm like, this is one of the most amazing things I've heard. But he also does, wrestling, and that's the whole thing.
He does the MMA and he just goes nuts. I mean,
MMA, he goes crazy.
Yeah. Mauro, you
gotta love him. And Doug, you gotta love this calendar year that's been 2022. We're working our way out of the COVID era, and now we have great fights popping off. Do you have a favorite fight that you saw this year, buddy?
Oh, that's a good question. We've had some really good knockouts, and I really love the rematch knockout that Naoya Inoue scored over Nonito Donaire. Not because he won or that he won by knockout. I think most of us thought that was going to happen, right? The first fight was sensational. Donaire shocked him, took him 12 rounds, broke his face. But I thought around the 9th round that Donaire was about to drown the young man. So I thought Inoue was going to lose for the first time. I really did. Watching it real time, you get excited, and then you watch it back and you're like, oh, he wasn't in that much trouble. But in real time with the emotions and watching, and it was like at the crack of dawn, West Coast time, I was like, shoot, you know what? Donaire is an all-time great. Even though Donaire lost that fight, just going the distance and making the fight as competitive and as entertaining as that first fight was, I believe it was 2019. I thought even though he caught an L, it still enhanced his legacy. I'm like that. I look at the performance. I don't look at the W or the L or the D. I just, what did they do? Who are they fighting? And
that's true. Yeah. That's
Donaire
kind of
was in with
school,
a monster. Yeah.
Yeah. That's an old school.
I think that's
way
the way
of
it should
thinking,
be.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think of it this way. Donaire or Donaire for this generation is like Roberto Duran was in the 80s, right? He's not in his prime. He can't be. His prime was a previous decade. We saw it, when Donaire scored KO of the year against Victor Arcinian and had a sensational knockout over Fernando Montiel. And he was up in the top 3 of the pound for pound, just like Inoue was at that time in 2019. So 2019 was the monster's time, and it wasn't Donaire's time, but Donaire was still dangerous. And he proved it after that fight by continuing to knock out world-class fighters and picking up the green belt, the WBC title, and defending it with a knockout. So going into that rematch as the number one bantamweight, not named Inoue. And I thought that Inoue was going to stop him this time. I thought Inoue was going to give him his due respect and attack the body earlier and get like a mid-rounds to late-round stoppage. Yeah. But I still thought Inoue had to start carefully. Like, he had to be leery of not just that left hook, but that right hand of Donaire's that did so much damage in the first fight. But no, he started it like he's dropping his own hook. And I'm thinking, you're crazy. You're hooking with a great hooker. Like, you might get sparked here. But he hurts the old man, and then he finishes him in the second round. And even though it was like the foregone conclusion, just the way Inoue did it, I was like, God, wow. I love it. You love to see an elite fighter have elite performances that just like blow your mind. Like, to me, that was like Tommy Hearns knocking out Roberto Duran.
Very good.
Duran was not, he wasn't in his prime weight. Duran was an all-time great, maybe the greatest lightweight. He's fighting Tommy Hearns at junior middleweight, but you couldn't write Duran off as like an old man or like on the slide or whatever, because he was still relevant. Like, in 1983, he had picked up a junior middleweight belt. He beat up Davey Moore, right? And I think prior to that, he knocked out Pepino Cuevas. And then I think at the end of 83, he goes 15 rounds with Marvin Hagler, right? He goes 15 rounds with the middleweight champion who was in his prime. Like, 1983 is still prime Marvin Hagler. And this guy Duran goes 15, not 12 rounds, 15 rounds, and it's tit for tat. So you couldn't say, oh, Duran shot. You couldn't say that going into that showdown with Tommy Hearns. But Tommy Hearns cut his head off in 2 rounds.
And he won another big championship after that fight against Iran Barkley. Is that correct?
Yes, at the end of the decade. Yeah, yes. 1989. Yeah. And that was fight of the year.
When my trainer...
Sadly, it took me that long to appreciate Duran, because like even in the early 80s, I hated him because he was that guy who beat Sugar Ray Leonard.
You're a Leonard
so he was
fan.
the enemy. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When my trainer actually shared a VHS, this shows our age here, copy of...
shows your age.
And Hearns, I could not believe, because I didn't know at that time. I was young and I was, up and coming, in the amateur ranks. And he kept giving me tapes to like study and watch. I was like, oh man, Duran's gonna win this fight. And then, I was like, whoa. And then I learned the power of the mighty Tommy Hearns.
Yeah,
like,
that's real.
That was some ridiculous stuff there.
But see, that's the thing. Nobody else could do that to Duran.
No.
But a prime hitman Hearns. And I'm saying no other bantamweight can do to Donaire what Inoue did. No other 118-pounder can do to Donaire. I don't even think there's a 122-pounder out there that can knock out Donaire like that. Okay, maybe take him late and stuff. No. The only time he's been knocked out before was against the Axeman.
Yeah,
Nicholas Walters.
And
that was a
huge size
featherweight
advantage. Yeah.
Nicholas Walters. Like, listen. Like, the week of the fight, like Wednesday of that fight, he was 140 pounds for real. And I know that for a fact. Like Wednesday, he's a junior welterweight, boiled down to 126 pounds on Friday. That's the only time he weighed 126 pounds, like a couple hours around weigh-in time, right? Like Shane Mosley at lightweight. He never walked around at 135. Shane Mosley always walked around about like 150. That's what he trained at. But he boiled his body down to 135. He could do that because he had 30 hours to replenish. That's the beauty and the curse of the previous day weigh-ins, right? They were put there. It was instituted to supposedly keep boxers from drying out and protect their brains and protect their overall health. But fighters and trainers game the system. You can do that kind of thing.
So that being said, since we're on the topic, just do you give us who do you think was the best win that Donaire had? He had a lot of great wins. He was in a lot of different weight classes.
Yeah.
Is that something you
Fernando Montiel was a big deal because Montiel out of Mexico, he was a 3-division title holder. He was a marvelous talent. He had traveled to Japan to face a really dangerous and respected Japanese champion. I believe that his name was Hozumi Hasegawa. And Montiel, Montiel took him out in like 4 rounds. So Montiel was feeling himself. He had momentum going into that title unification against Donaire, and Donaire just took his head off. Matter of fact, Donaire dropped him. I think it was a hook, of course. And the fight should have been over because Montiel goes flat on his back and he convulses. He's like, his arms go crazy in his legs. And I don't think the referee should have let him get up. But he did. And then he was stopped shortly thereafter. But that was like 2 elite fighters, 2 guys in their prime, 2 guys who were, really accomplished and who won titles in multiple divisions. And Donaire just showed like Roy Jones could fight a fellow elite fighter like a James Toney and just distance himself. Like, yes, we're both in the pound for pound.
Did you have to talk about that one?
I know.
His favorite fighter. Kevin's favorite fighter is James Toney.
Oh, James Toney? Yeah, you got good taste. You got good taste in fighters.
I had Chris Bird on the show, and I had to, kind of break his balls a little bit. I was like, you beat my boy. My favorite guy's Evander Holyfield, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, man, and I was at that fight, and I was there with my dad, and I knew that, we always say styles make fights.
Yeah.
And I knew that Chris Bird was all types of wrong for Evander Holyfield.
Chris Bird, hey, listen, 3 fights in a row, 3 losses in a row for Holyfield when he's way past his prime, right? He's a young man in the 80s, right? He's still dangerous, obviously. He's probably in his prime, early 90s as well. But by the end of the 90s, way past his prime. Into the 2000s, like he really should have been retired, right? But he fights in succession Chris Bird, James Toney, and Larry Donald. Like the worst, absolute worst styles for a guy like Holyfield.
For someone that's getting wild. And then he goes where? All the way to Nikolai Valuev. He gives up 100 pounds in weight, a foot in height. I'm like, what is he doing?
He may have won that fight.
I thought he won that fight, right?
Yeah, no, he may have. I mean, in America, he probably would have. But I see Valuev, despite the size advantage, he's there. You present yourself to Holyfield. You stand in front of him or try to rush him. He loves it. But if
probably the worst
specialist or a boxer, forget about it.
Is Valuev probably the worst champion? Is Valuev probably the worst heavyweight champion in the history of boxing, or is that Primo Carnera? Or I mean, I guess there's a lot of
picking on the Giants. Yeah,
Charles
Trevor Bryan, does he count? Trevor Bryan, the guy who got beat by Daniel Dubois.
No, he doesn't. That's a secondary belt.
Yeah.
Who is the guy that Anthony Joshua beat for the IBF title?
Oh, Charles Martin.
Charles Martin.
I just mentioned, Charles Martin.
Charles Martin is actually a talented boxer, but he's the most unaccomplished. I mean, he held that. He never defended that title. The title was stripped from Tyson Fury, and the guy he fought was really nobody. And he won that title because that guy twisted his ankle. Yeah, it's just like that's. I mean, really, that's like basically
that was a crazy one too.
Right. Yeah. You were a world title holder, but it was a lottery ticket. You got paid well to hand it over to AJ in London, I guess. Yeah.
Good performance by AJ though. Can't take anything away from AJ. That was
Here's the thing about AJ at that time as a prospect, because he was still a prospect even when he won that IBF title, right? As a prospect, he didn't know any better. He didn't know he could be hurt. He expected that he was going to win. And so he fought with that type of stupid confidence, like an adolescent feels, a teenage boy feels invincible. Like, I'm never going to get sick. I'm never going to get hurt. I'm going to drive 90 miles per hour without my seatbelt all the time. Whatever. I'm going to drink and drive, whatever. You do crazy things and you're not worried about it. And you got like an aura and until you crash, right? Until you get sick. Or somebody kicks your ass, or just life brings you down, or whatever. but AJ had that really up until definitely when Andy Ruiz beat him. That made him really think and second guess himself. But even before that, he had a few tough fights that made him think, you know what, I'm not invincible. And he started to fight a little differently, a little more cautiously. But against Prince Charles, he was feeling himself. He had that shine, and he went out there, and he was real crisp. He had really good, crisp technique, but he was a stalking killer. He was a hunter killer. He was trying to get you, and he would get it because he expected to. He wanted to, and he was a different fighter, and he's a different fighter now. And I wonder, you talk about, you talk about good fights this year. I think that rematch is it's almost going to happen almost a year after their first fight was in November last year, right?
Yeah.
So too long, too much time between these fights, but whatever. It's another discussion. But that's an intriguing fight, man. Can he get it together and beat this guy, a fellow Olympic gold medalist, but totally different? Like Usyk had 10 times as many fights. Yeah. Is a loosey-goosey dude. He doesn't care. He'll fight anywhere, any country. He'll fight anybody. He doesn't worry about a size disadvantage. He makes it work for him. He's just like a relaxed guy. And you can tell. It's just how he conducts himself outside of boxing. He's happy-go-lucky. And he's one of those guys, he can have a bad night. And he's had a couple of them in title fights. He's had a bad night. He gets through it. He doesn't let it overtake him. So he's tough for a guy like Anthony Joshua, who I could be wrong. I think Joshua overthinks things. And sometimes what's that saying? Over-analysis leads to paralysis, right?
You can't box. You can't try to box against a boxer. I mean, that's just pure common sense. I don't know what specifically strategy they were working on for that fight. I just saw somebody that was very tentative. I think it was almost like one of those situations, and I'm trying to think of a fight in history. You could even say Marvin Hagler against Sugar Ray Leonard. It's a similar type of mentality. I'm going to prove to this guy that I can outbox him.
Yeah,
and
to a lesser extent, Yeah,
it's almost you let your ego
Hagler against Duran. He was kind of overthinking it.
You let your ego
getting
kind of get
outboxed
ahead of yourself. Yes,
right. And then I think, luckily for Hagler, with the Duran fight in 1983, he had 15 rounds to say, okay, I got to press this dude. I got to be the bigger man. I got to take it away from him. I got to really test his stamina. I got to believe in my stamina, my conditioning, which he did. And coming on strong in like the final 3 or 4 rounds, that won the fight for Hagler. Otherwise, he would have lost that fight. He was really close to losing the middleweight championship of the world to a former lightweight champion, which would have been nuts. That would have been crazy.
So sometimes it's the mentality too. So for example, Marvin Hagler, it's much easier for him to kind of switch up his game plan. Anthony Joshua just seems like generally like a really nice guy. I mean, he's
not Hagler. He's not. He's not destruction.
Yeah,
and
he's
destroy.
not
Destruct and destroy. No.
He's he is like the happiest loser I think I've ever seen in boxing. He will lose a fight.
He's rich, man.
He's just so. Most fighters are very angry and whatnot, and you see a smile on his face. He's very congratulatory.
To paraphrase Hagler, he's sleeping in those silk pajamas.
Yes,
and silk sheets for real. So it's this rematch is going to be interesting. This has been a good year. We've had championship bouts for the undisputed title. I was ringside in Carson, California for Jermell Charlo's stoppage of Brian Castano.
What a knockout.
What a knockout. What a fight. What an atmosphere. The right venue for that, because it was like hardcore fans, outdoors. We're all like surrounded kind of on top of the ring. Jermell brought that energy. He was still salty after the fight. He's yelling at reporters. I like it. He's surly.
He looked great.
I was smart. I took my time with my post-fight story and didn't attend the post-fight press conference, so I didn't take any abuse. That's when you're a veteran, when to fight, when not to fight. You could just I'm going to finish my story. Yeah. I ain't worried about it. I know he's mad. He wants to. Anybody who don't have him in the pound for pound, he wants to yell at him. Okay. He wasn't in the Ring Magazine's pound for pound at the time. Like, I'm not I ain't getting singled out. No, thank you. Yeah.
So why? So that being said,
I like that fight. Yeah. Go ahead.
Great fight. One of the greatest knockouts of the year.
But that's how you want to
Ortiz
see an
versus
undisputed
Martin.
champion. That's how you want to see
Oh
an
yeah,
undisputed
there's no
champion get
controversy
crowned.
there.
Oh yeah, he bought it. Charlo bought it. One of my favorite knockouts of the year, also Ortiz versus Martin. You know,
Yes.
who we just mentioned. That was some ruckus stuff.
Yeah.
My
That was weird.
stepdaughter was
Yeah,
watching.
he just
this
looks
with me,
over to the
13.
side, right?
Yeah, he's hanging over
I
the
forgot
rope.
I forgot that was January. It seems like last year, but yeah, that was
Dude.
January, right?
That
You guys have
was
great
what a way
memories.
to start the
Yeah.
year off.
It
And,
was.
and my stepdaughter's watching it with me. She's like, "This is barbaric." And she's
Mhm.
13 years old,
She's right.
and she's like, "This is difficult to watch right now." I'm like,
She's
"Yeah,
a good
sometimes It
kid.
makes me question why I watch this stuff. Like, what is wrong with me?"
Yeah, that's a good kid right there.
Oh yeah.
we
dude,
need
she
more.
loves it.
We need more compassionate human beings. So
Dude,
when
speaking
somebody
of
says that
kids-
about boxing, I'm like, you're right. Okay, this is my addiction. Leave me alone. You know,
yeah,
I'll watch it by myself. But no, this has been a good year because we've had the unification fights. We haven't had
Mhm.
all the mega fights that we want, but we've had big upsets. You know, Bivol beating Canelo Alvarez. I was ringside
Big
for that
time.
as well, and at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. And we've had because see when a guy like Bivol scores an upset, suddenly he becomes a name, and Canelo stays a superstar. That's the awesome thing. That was the
Yeah.
great thing about Oscar De La Hoya when he would lose to like Sugar Shane Mosley. It's like
Yeah.
now Sugar Shane Mosley is a superstar. He's not just
Yep.
a hardcore fan guy, and De La Hoya is still the golden boy.
Definitely
So
raises,
you just bring
the
more
profile.
people up into that crossover appeal. So I love big time upsets like that. And I'm an unabashed Canelo Alvarez fan. I'm a Triple G fan, so obviously I'm excited about the rubber match. And I like it when guys who are just known to hardcore fans take chances and score big wins like Jesse Bam Rodriguez, and they get more fans. And he's probably still just a hardcore fan attraction right now. But if he fights more often in his hometown of San Antonio, huge market, he can at least become a local attraction. And that's something. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard with a sub bantamweight,
I think the
right, to become a big star. But I like what he's doing, fighting Carlos Cuadras and then Sri Seketsu Rungvisai, and having come up from junior flyweight to junior bantamweight. Those are boss moves. We need more of that.
Yeah. The opponents are there for him, so I think has an opportunity to become a pretty big star. And the opponents are there, but also the opponents that are there are always in exciting fights. So that's the most important.
And they will fight each other. If you're a 115 pounder, how are you going to make any money unless
That's a
you're fighting a
StubHub
fellow
fight, right?
badass?
right.
I see StubHub all over that. I know it's called something else now, but
Yeah, Dignity Health Park
yeah,
something. Yeah, I can't keep up with it,
Yeah.
but I'm still going to call the Staples Center.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. But
Yeah, I'm in the
but
same
no,
boat,
but
buddy.
honestly, no, San Antonio, there's bigger venues. And there's real fans there.
yeah, that's
And
true.
in San Antonio, somebody like Ramon Chocolatito Gonzalez or El Gallo, Juan Francisco Estrada, if they fight there, they'll be supported. Even if the fans are there to see the hometown fighter, whether it's Bam's brother, Joshua Franco, or Bam, Rodriguez, they will appreciate that other fighter because they are hardcore fans. They really are.
Actually, it's funny you brought that up. So I got a potential fight for you. How about, because Joshua Franco and Bam Rodriguez, they're brothers, correct? Am I right or am I wrong?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. So how about having those two guys on the card against Chocolatito and Estrada?
That'd be awesome. That would
I
be
think
awesome.
that would be huge. That would be one of the biggest little guy cards ever.
But I
Did they pay
think
the money? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so Eddie Hearn is at least co-promoter for 3 of those 4 that you mentioned, right?
Okay.
Franco is Golden Boy Promotions. No, they're all under the DAZN platform, so that helps. But I think if you're Eddie Hearn, the biggest fight that can be made at 115 is that third match between Chocolatito and Estrada, and you want to
How
make
about have
that
the brothers fight each
before
other?
you let the young guns come in and maybe retire them. You know what I mean? You want to get, you want them to make as much money as they can, because Chocolatito's not going to make as much money fighting a Franco or a Bam Rodriguez. As much as we love Bam, it's not going to happen. He's not going to get paid 7 figures to fight them. He might get paid 7 figures to fight Estrada because they have history there. You can really promote that fight. You can do like DAZN can do a half-hour special on the rivalry between Chocolatito and Estrada because they fought in 2012 and they fought 2 years ago, and both fights were awesome. So they got all that footage that they can work with. They can talk to the media. They can build that up for real.
I know this is out of the realm of possibility, but I'm just going to throw it out there to get your thoughts, John and Dougie, just because we're talking about the little guys. How about two brothers fighting each other? You think there would be interest there? You think that is something that
there are sickos out there that would be into it for sure.
Would you guys be interested in?
I would be against it.
You'd be against it?
I got brothers, and we tried to kill each other. I mean, seriously, we were all a year apart.
I got brothers too.
It's dangerous. I'm telling you, it's dangerous. Yeah. There are trainers who won't let brothers spar because they're so comfortable with beating the shit out of each other. They take it to a savage level. It can. I think
it would be a mega fight if somehow you got two brothers fighting each other.
Yeah,
the same weight class.
Be interested, like Dougie was saying, and Kev. Like
I know it's not going to happen, but I'm just.
It has happened.
But Kevin, we trained together.
It has happened. Yeah.
Okay.
We trained together. It was brutal. And we're brothers. Like you're one of my best friends on planet Earth. But what did I say? I don't want to spar you. I don't want to fight you. I'm not going to give you the proper sparring. It's not going to be right. I can't. I just because there's only one way you could go if you fight, and it's all the way. I don't want to hit you. I love you. Like you're my brother. So like, and even though you're bigger than I am and probably more athletic, but guess what? I have a little bit more boxing experience, and I don't want to hurt.
You have a lot.
I'm not saying I'm gonna kick your ass, but I don't want to do any damage. And it's a thing. Speaking of damage, let's go back to fights of the year. Oh my God, Serrano and Katie Taylor. Wow. That's great. Like the Arturo Gatti versus Mickey Ward version of female fights. That's probably the best fight I've ever seen in my entire life. Amanda on the show prior to, beautiful person. She just all the time is all about boxing. Like I ask her, like, what do you do for fun? She's like, box. I'm like, you watch any TV shows? She's like, I box. I'm like,
she just trains. She is always training.
She's always
training. That's why she can make all those different weights, 7 different weight classes. I think 115 to 140. She's won belts, and she's kicked ass at MMA.
Yes,
she is a combat athlete. Like she is super dedicated. A lot of people thought she won that fight against Katie Taylor. I thought it was very close. Yeah, I scored it for Taylor. I think Taylor had to win. Or no, actually, I think I had Serrano winning the final round. I did. I got to look at my how I scored.
I think that was a case of Taylor probably edged it. Like if you do the individual rounds, but I think Serrano won the night because he had her hurt multiple times.
She did,
and it was one of those. Who would you rather be at the end? I would rather be
definitely
Serrano. She really gave her a good whooping in I think round 5 and round 6, and then Taylor used her boxing skills to kind of get herself out of trouble. But obviously you score each round individually, so you could argue that Taylor kind of edged more of the rounds, but the rounds that Serrano won, definitely she won her rounds more decisively than Katie Taylor did.
But beyond the W or the L, again, like that's a kind of a fight like that under that type of spotlight on that platform in that venue, right? Packed with fans of both fighters, sending that message out there. Like if you take a loss in a fight like that and you fight as well as Serrano did, it enhances your legacy. It's not a negative. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Like Duran losing to Hagler. That enhanced his legacy. You count that as one of his best performances because guess what? He's a fighter from the 70s and he was a lightweight and he's fighting the best middleweight. So there's no shame in catching an L against an all-time great middleweight champion. One of the 5 greatest middleweights ever. And with Taylor and Serrano, they're both pound for pound. They're both like top 2 or 3 pound for pound. They're right in that mix with Clarissa Shields, right?
Absolutely.
And they're super accomplished, and it was for all the marbles at lightweight. And really, the best weight class for Amanda Serrano is featherweight. It's 126. So, I mean, if you take the lightweight champion to the hilt the way Serrano did, and you're the one who did the most damage, it's not really a loss. It's a win. It was a win for both fighters. It's a huge win for women's boxing because other networks and promoters and sponsors are looking at that, and they're like, wow, even dudes were excited about this fight, and it exceeded expectations, and it did business. So
it got everyone talking.
Big year. Yeah, this is a big year for women's boxing because I think Clarissa Shields versus Savannah Marshall and Baumgardner versus Mayer. There's going to be a lot of attention on those fights, like with the pre-fight buildup, because there's more of a grudge, right? Those rivalries, those matchups. There's a little more bad blood between those women with the four that I mentioned. And that's going to help sell the fight. That's going to help draw attention. And the fighters are talented as such to where the fights will deliver. I don't know.
The personalities there too.
Taylor Serrano set the bar super high. Super high.
Ridiculous.
I don't know if they can exceed that, but I mean,
I was going crazy watching the fight. And my wife comes out, and I was like, you got to see this right now.
Yeah.
And she'll get involved. Like, I'm a big Yankee fan. This is a sports house. And, I watch UFC. I watch boxing. Boxing's my number one passion. So I'm like, you gotta check this out. Like, this is next level. Like, the fight was so good. Excuse me. Speaking of female boxers, we had Kali Reese on last week. She's been on my show several times. And a big year for her. She's got fights lined up, and she's on an HBO show.
That's
True
amazing.
Detective.
Yeah.
Like she's crossing over.
She had that movie that was critically acclaimed, which I haven't seen yet. I do want to see it.
She's a great actress.
I'll watch that. What's the name of that series? True Crime.
True Detective.
True Detective. Yeah.
It's on. I watched Detective 4.
I watched part
HBO.
of the first season. Yeah.
And she is just like, as soon as she's been on my show like 4 times now. And
that's cool.
We hit it all right away. Like Lou DiBella is like, you got to talk to her, you know? And I'm like, okay, great. I love Lou. And, I'm like, absolutely. And when, again, to my wife, she heard me talking to her, like, because she could hear me, like, through my office, like, through the other room. And she's like, it sounded like you guys really had a good time. She's like, you guys, hit it off really well. And ever since then, she's been nothing but great. We communicate just even on a personal level. And that's what I love about boxing. Like when you meet humble people, like, for example, Clarissa Shields, I met her. She's a darling sweetheart. It's like,
really? Because there's a lot of people in boxing that say she's mean. I hear that all the time. No, I'm not saying I haven't had that experience with her. I'm just saying, don't shoot the messenger. Definitely don't get Clarissa mad.
I think you're just your
I'm just saying, you see that
of,
out there. Yeah, no, but I think that's good that you've had a good experience. You're letting people know. So
I'll throw it out there. I know she talks a lot of shit, to fighters, but she was. Maybe I caught her on the right night. I
don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe they didn't actually have. Although I have heard a few people say that they had bad personal, person-to-person experiences. But and these are people that I like and respect, and they're generally good human beings.
Yeah.
But I think maybe what rubs a lot of folks the wrong way, folks who haven't even met her, is the braggadocious or just that combative nature that she has. Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of Ronda Rousey, whose career
it's a persona, to be honest with you.
Right, it's a persona, right? And I remember, man, people hated Ronda. I think they still do hate Ronda, but she was that. A lot of people do. She was that woman who would say, "I'll kick anybody's ass," and I'm not just talking about women, right? Yeah. And that ruffled some feathers. Yeah. Like, whoa, hey.
I think people pick up some of that stuff. They pick it up from Floyd, and I think a lot of people are kind of trying to run with that. And obviously, Floyd picked it up from other people because that was kind of Muhammad Ali, and then Ali took
Hector
it from Gorgeous George. I think that's where Ali got your stick from. Was
listen,
Gorgeous George the wrestler?
Boxing has a history of sometimes when a fighter doesn't have necessarily like a fighter's real personality, that fighter being his or herself, right, is not going to garner crossover attention, and they don't have a boxing style, right? They're not Arturo Gatti in the ring, right? Like Arturo Gatti, everyone loved him because outside of the ring, he's a regular guy, and he was real humble. He treated everybody the same. Like folks like that, but in the ring, blood and guts, and it's dramatic and it's insane, and it's like beyond a Rocky movie. So he don't need to act out, right? He don't need to create.
What I love about him is when he gave Mickey Ward the water after I think it was the third fight. He just hands him water. Like, that's class. I was at 1 and 3.
Oh,
and
wow.
A lot of people are
you're
like,
you're at the first one.
The programs here still, they're hanging up on my wall. Like,
were you having like a heart attack in those late rounds? Like, what was that like?
Oh God. You know, like, and I couldn't wait to go home, Dougie, to be honest with you, because after I saw the first one, I was like, man, that was insane. I gotta see what this looks like on television.
Right.
So I go home, and then I hear Cappuccino say, "Hey, fight ain't over."
That's right.
Fight ain't over.
That was nuts, man.
Oh, that 9th round?
Yeah.
That was insane. That body shot. And I was not impressed row that night. I got tickets from Ring Talk, where me and Kevin met, and he used to work for Pedro Fernandez as well.
Right.
And so I just got comped to go and have a great night. The best thing is the third fight, okay, I took my sister because she was a big Arturo Gatti fan. Like everyone was. Like, I'm originally from Jersey.
And by the way, the rematch in the third fight, they did that up big. They took that to Atlantic City, which
Atlantic
is like,
City, yep.
Yeah, Arturo Gatti land, right? And
right.
HBO got fully behind it, right? With a full production value and all that.
Huge.
Because fight one was up in Connecticut, and it was boxing after dark.
Yeah.
It was boxing
Mohegan,
after dark.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we got a big production. My sister is a big Arturo Gatti fan. We're from Jersey, all that kind of stuff.
Mandatory.
And then obviously Mickey Ward's from Boston, Lowell rather, Massachusetts. And then my sister gets all fired up like midway through the fight because the fight's cracking. This is the third fight's cracking. And she's like, "Go back to Lowell, you mother effer." And I'm like, "Yo, you're going to get us killed." Like, first of all, it's the height of like Massachusetts versus New York in baseball between the Red Sox and the Yankees. And now we got this here happening, very East Coast rival between New Jersey and, Massachusetts. I'm like, "You're going to get us killed."
Plus, by the way, these guys like each other. they're actually friends when they're not beating the shit out of each other. Yeah.
Oh, they're wonderful. I mean, look what happened. It was like Rocky 3 scenario. Like when Apollo Creed comes in and trains Rocky. Like Mickey Ward came in and helped Arturo Gatti, get better. Like the thing is, I remember Emmanuel Stewart, like obviously one of the greatest commentators and greatest boxing minds of all time. Yeah. When, he would also often mention that there's only so far you could go. Like Arturo's been in so many battles and so many wars, like going all the way back to Robinson, going all the way back to all these fights.
I thought he was done after those 2 Ivan Robinson fights. I really did.
That's what I'm saying.
Retiring. That was 1998.
Right.
Yeah.
And Mayweather didn't do him any service either.
But I mean, here's the thing. Mayweather fought him in 2005. No, they knew. I mean, listen, 2005 is after 30 rounds with Mickey Ward. What's left?
Yeah.
A trilogy like that, and a truly all-time great trilogy. Even though these guys they weren't elite fighters in like a pound for pound sense, right? Like they were just guys that were maybe ranked
blue collared,
maybe ranked at junior welterweight, but they weren't champions. These weren't the top junior welterweights of that time. They just weren't. They weren't like you wouldn't throw them in there with Kostya Tszyu, right? I'll just leave it at that, right?
You're talking about Gotti.
Yeah, Gotti or Ward. You would not put them in there with Costa Zoo.
I would put.
You'd be like, hey,
them,
that's wrong. Don't do that.
I would put them in there with Zoo. Actually, it's funny. Just to
You
bring
want
this
to
up,
see them get decapitated?
I sent John a clip the other day of Vince Phillips against Costa Zoo.
Yes.
And I think Vince Phillips was a pretty big underdog.
He was.
He put on a hell of a performance, and he stopped Costa Zoo.
Yeah, but Vince, just as tough as those guys.
Yeah,
just as big as a heart. I knew Vince. Yeah. I knew Vince very well. Yeah, he could have been an elite fighter had he not had like drug addictions and addictions outside of the ring. He had a lifestyle. He did what he did, living the wrong lifestyle, 100% to the hill. Wrong. Yeah. But Vince like a technical boxer. You look at Vince's technique, especially in the 90s. And by the way, that loss made Zoo better. That loss brought Zoo down. They brought him back to earth.
Do you guys remember when he knocked him out, Zab Judah, when Costa Zoo knocked out Zab Judah?
November of 2001.
Who was the stand-up comedian that did it? Cedric the Entertainer. When he's like, don't ever play with matches. Because Zab Judah was so rocked. And I was actually out with my boys, and I missed the fight, but I came home. And luckily, my father would always like record like VHS for me and give it to me. Yeah, he was a big boxing fan. That's how I got into it. Beautiful. And then I'd go home and watch it. And I was like, oh, man, like that shot was insane. Like Costa Zoo's power in that fight.
But his accuracy, man, and the trajectory of his right hand is just like, like laser beam.
It was a laser beam, and we mentioned earlier about Donaire's career. Like when he took out Vic Darchinyan, Vic was knocked in the next week. He had no idea where he was.
Yeah, and Vic was a killer. Vic was the boogeyman. He was the danger man at 112 pounds. He was knocked out, man. Vic was brilliant at flyweight and junior bantamweight. Actually, at 115, he was amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
But that lets you know how incredible Donaire was, man. It's like, you wiped this dude out? Wow. Okay.
Hey, so Dougie, we have a fan in here, so I just kind of wanted to switch gears for a second.
Sure. Interactive is good.
So, and I believe this person said they're from Croatia, but they have another question about Triple G and Canelo. But
I think this is news on Crawford Spence. I don't know. I was thinking people were asking me at the beginning of the year, do you think it'll happen? And I said, yeah, I think it happens this year because Crawford's a free agent and Spence has run out of opponents within the PBC umbrella. I don't think Spence cares to fight Keith Thurman, right?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, he won at Thurman years ago and now he's bitter. He's like, no, screw off, Keith, you know? Yeah. So who else is there to fight? But I think this is a big problem with this era. These guys want to make $20 million for a big fight, and it's like no, it's that you can't get paid that and have that event be a financial success. If the promoter/network platform has to shell out, $35 to $45 million just to get the main event, it's going to lose. You can't get enough money via pay-per-view or the ticket sales, even if the tickets are crazy and people actually buy them. The sponsors, the foreign TV rights, when you put all the money together, they'd be lucky if they break even, but it might not break even. So
what's the solution?
They got to be realistic about how much they want to get paid. What they need to do, what they should have done, like 4 years ago, they should have said, listen, we're both badasses. We can both handle ourselves.
Exactly.
Neither one of us is getting knocked out. Like, we're that type of fighter. Like, if you're Spence, you're like, I'm too tough. I'm Texas. You know what I'm too strong. And if you're Crawford, you're like, I'm too versatile. I'm too tough. Folks from Omaha, that's tough. I mean, I don't think people know about it, but Omaha's a tough city.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You know that you're going to go 12 rounds. You know it's going to be a hotly contested fight. You know it's going to be entertaining. And you look at the big picture. We're going to fight 2 or 3 times. And by the third fight, we're making that kind of money. We're making the crazy retirement money or whatever. And we're building a legacy. We're doing one of those trilogies like a Gotti Ward or a Bo Holyfield or whatever,
Absolutely, man.
I'm leaving out a bunch of them, but Ali Frazier. I don't want to commit boxing blasphemy, but you know what I'm saying. Like trilogies. The thing is, like I said with Chocolatito and Estrada, like they're little guys. They're not from this country. Yeah. They don't speak English.
You can lowball those guys,
right? But they will get paid for a third fight because of those first two fights.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. They'll get paid more than right. Oh yeah, Barrera Morales. By the third fight, it was a pay-per-view fight. The first fight was Boxing After Dark,
and then they elevated
and it was in
pay-per-view.
and it was in the Mandalay Bay Event Center, and they had to cut it in half. They had about 6,000 people there, mostly from Tijuana. Okay, but the rematch, it was in I think it was MGM Grand, and it was filled.
Yep,
and same thing with the rubber match
as well. Yeah,
and it's pay-per-view. So that's looking at the big picture to me. And understanding about legacy, and I wish Spence and Crawford would have been thinking this way while both were still in their 20s, right? While they were like 28, 29, at least. Like, hey,
yeah, Crawford might be past his peak, so you never
he's
know.
In his mid-30s now, right?
What you're going to get. He seems like he's chasing the money, but at the same time, Terrence Crawford's knocked out, I think, his last 6 opponents.
I'd like for him to fight more for sure.
Yeah,
Dougie,
I see a question about Triple G. He says, Jonathan Banks said Triple G will try to box at close range against Canelo. In your opinion, is it a good plan, or should he box as in second fight? No, I like Banks's idea. I think he needs to crowd Canelo. I think he needs to outwork Canelo, because Canelo could fight inside or outside, but he likes to fight at his own pace. Canelo takes a leisurely pace, whether he's hunting or being hunted. He likes to dictate the pace, and he does it by getting respect. He makes you miss, he makes you pay. But if you're tough and you can defend well on the inside, like Triple G, at least prime Triple G could do this. If you get in his chest and you set a pace, you work 3 minutes of each round, you're going to make Canelo uncomfortable, and you're going to make him back up. He's going to go to the ropes just to get a reprieve or whatever, and that's where you could really score. So I think that's a good idea. Not necessarily hard pressure, but just get in close and work them. And Banks is saying box at close range. So I'm not saying get in close and go Orlando Salido. No, I'm talking about box a technical puncher, which is what Triple G is. And if you look at the second fight, there was beautiful infighting from both guys. Yeah. They can fight on the inside. They know how to defend. And they're tough. They can take it even when they can't defend. When they don't roll with the punch or parry it or block it, they can eat it, and they keep punching back. So they're a good matchup. That's like peanut butter and jelly.
Do you think that Canelo's going to have a hard time mentally going into this fight after a loss? But
no,
there's a flip side to that, because
I don't. I think. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I thought going into the Bivol fight, he was having a tough time mentally being up for the fight.
Okay.
I didn't feel the Canelo energy. I didn't feel Cinco de Mayo fiesta energy in Las Vegas in the days leading up to that fight. It didn't feel like a Canelo event until Canelo entered the arena. Yeah. Once he entered the arena, then it was like, ah, but before that, everything was subdued.
It was dead. I live in Vegas.
It was dead. You know it. I'm not hating.
There was
on
no
Canelo
billboards. There wasn't any commercials. There was no fire.
It was like they were mailing it in.
John never leaves North Las Vegas, so.
but I think Canelo just.
No, but you're right.
Was a victim of his own. Yeah. He was a victim of his own success. He's just like, I show up, I win, I'm great. Yeah. Let's move on. And you know how he shows up to like the weigh-ins or press conferences sometimes with the pajamas. It looks like he's wearing pajamas. I think he's got like some kind of clothing sponsor. But it was like that, like, oh, I just woke up and I show up and all right, weigh in. I'm gonna fight this guy, whatever. And I was like,
it looked like he didn't give a shit.
You can't mail it in with this guy. Yeah, even midway through the fight, it seemed like he's like, I don't know if I'm gonna win this one. I can't hurt this guy, and he's still trying to win fuck,
So
And
so
it's like,
Dougie,
I think getting the loss, I think it's like cold water in his face, like, oh shit. And I think
So he put
fighting
the
Triple
water
G,
on the balls.
yeah, pour some water, pour some ice on the balls, but also Triple G does not like him,
yeah,
and he's not, and Canelo doesn't like Triple G, and it's like you can't hate Bivol. Bivol he's just there. He's gonna say decent things, and it's you can't get up for a guy like that. You should get up for a guy like that because he's a badass, but Triple G, I think, is the right opponent for Canelo coming off a loss, because
Yes, indeed.
it's like he's got something to train for. Yeah.
So who took more punishment, you think, in their last fight? So you think Canelo took more punishment or Triple G in their previous fight? I'm talking about the fight that Triple G had against
with the
Murata
Japanese guy,
compared to the fight that Canelo had against Bivol.
Canelo did. I think Canelo did. Yeah, Canelo. His fight was 12 rounds. He was fighting a natural light heavyweight. Canelo's not a light heavyweight.
I never saw Canelo get hurt though in that fight. Really.
No, he doesn't. No, dude, he could take a shot, man.
I saw Triple G getting.
No, he did.
Pretty bad. Yes,
he did early. Yeah, like especially the second round. Murata put it on Triple G, and you get older, you don't have the same resistance, and punches like that will stay with you longer. There's no doubt about that. However, I just think punch for punch, I think Canelo took more, because Canelo was trying to be the boss in there and he wasn't able to do it. And Triple G was trying to be the boss in there. And once he asserted himself, he was the boss.
Yeah, he was the boss.
And when you're the boss and you're the punisher, and you're dishing out more punishment than the other guy, you take less punishment. And Canelo kind of gave up midway through that fight, and he took more, especially when he retreated to the ropes. And Bivol's a big dude. He's not a big puncher, but he's a big dude, and he was getting a lot of leverage on those right hands. I think a little bit more damage to Canelo.
We got to look at
because it went 12 rounds.
Triple G is 40 years old. But then there's also a flip side of the equation. Like Canelo has fought great opposition, but he's also fought a lot of fights at a very young age.
He's been in the ring.
15. He's got a lot of he's
a lot of mileage,
a lot of rounds.
Yeah, he's got he's got over 60 fights, right? Or about 60,
exactly.
Right?
So I think that's the comparison. Like when people ask me, like, what's going on here? Like, what's the tail of the tape? I'm like, well, you got one guy that's fought a ton of fights. You got another guy that is old, like 40. Like, I mean,
you're mean.
It's boxing,
but
man.
I know he's long in the tooth.
Yeah.
Just like Donaire, he was number one in his division. Triple G has been Ring Magazine's number one middleweight for like 8 years. He's been ranked for no, I mean it. He's been ranked for more than 10 years.
Yeah,
I know.
In the
middleweight rankings. No skip. No, he's never dropped out. Like, he's been, now listen, that's wear and tear, obviously, but we got to remember he had like 23 consecutive knockouts. Like, so for a long time, he was just a destroyer and he wasn't getting touched. Now, in recent years, he has gotten touched.
Father time.
That will tell on a fighter, but we have to give him his respect as a unified middleweight champion and the number one middleweight in the game.
Absolutely.
We have to give him that respect.
Can I ask you a question, Dougie, about up and coming fighters? Who do you think is up and coming on this calendar year that you took on notice?
Well, definitely Jesse Bam Rodriguez, but he was already a contender. He was I knew who he was, but obviously, but he was he was a contender at 108 pounds. So it's like, how many people are paying attention to him? But now he's a world title holder, and he's a real world title holder because he defended it against a former champ who at one time was in the pound for pound and was known as the Punisher of the 115-pound division. So he's definitely somebody who's emerged. He could fight twice more this year. I think that's the plan. He might drop down to flyweight and go for a title there. And if he does, that's awesome. Being a two-division champion at age 22. So he's a big deal. But there's a lot of guys who are coming up who are not contenders, who I think will be contenders. And one of them, I think, was just officially added to this Saturday's show from Texas, I believe. The Mark Magsayo, Ray Vargas featherweight
title. That's a great
fight. It's an interesting matchup. Vargas, he's a stick and move specialist. He's like, I don't know, 5'11". He's a 5'11" or 6 foot tall featherweight he can punch on the fly. So
freak.
He's not always fun to
It's a
watch.
freak of nature.
I don't know.
I don't know. He's a very good fighter. I think he's
No,
very
I know
under
he
the
is.
radar. Yeah.
He's
He
hard
really
to beat,
fight.
man. He's been in there with real guys. I don't know.
He's not
I don't know how-
Otorogati, but he can fight.
Oh, he could totally fight. He's actually tough. I don't know how Mike Sile beats him, to be quite honest. They're gonna have to really get in there and hurt him early or something. But I think the co-feature, there's a southpaw lightweight prospect named Frank Martin. His nickname is the Ghost. I'm actually more excited about watching him fight than watching the main event. Obviously, I'm going to watch the main event. I like Mike Sile, but just that style matchup, I don't think it's going to be the most compelling fight. It'll be compelling, but it won't be entertaining.
Is Frank Martin connected to Derek James? Is that his trainer?
Yes, he's trained by Derek James. He's a
Okay.
southpaw. His last fight, the only drawback on Martin is he doesn't fight often. I think he only fought twice last year. He's fought once this year. I think in January he fought like a fringe contender guy named Romero Duno, and took him out, like knocked him out. And Frank's not a big puncher. He's a stick and move guy, but he'll stop in the pocket, and he knows when to let his hands go. He's a real slick guy. Obviously, his nickname is the Ghost, right? So he's now you see me, now you don't. So he's a slick, athletic southpaw, but he does want to hurt guys, and he's got a really good, well-timed left hand, and he knows how to camouflage it. So he hits guys with punches they don't see, and that discombobulates them. And that's what he did against Romero Duno, and I liked what I saw. I like his footwork. I like his conditioning. He seems well-conditioned. I think he's somebody who's going to be, ranked in Ring Magazine's lightweight top 10 very soon. Maybe if he shines on Saturday, he'll be in that top 10. And there's a bunch of guys like right outside of Ring Magazine's lightweight top 10 who are up and comers at 135 pounds.
I like that Rivera guy. I don't know if you've seen him. Michel Rivera. I think he's from Dominican Republic.
Is he the guy who has Ali on his trunks?
Yes,
he kind of looks like Julian Jackson.
Yeah,
the hair, he's good. He's
an interesting prospect. He hasn't really stepped up to the level but I think he can
he's good though.
A test. He's a very good boxer. He's got some good pop in his right hand.
Yes.
So I'm definitely interested he just seems like somebody. I mean, he's gonna have to be a mandatory to get a title shot.
Yeah, no one's gonna willingly fight.
Speaking of Ali's,
you know who he reminds me of? But back in the day, in the 90s, the middleweight division, super deep. You guys know this. There was a guy, an African fighter based in Italy named Sumbu Kalambe.
Oh yeah,
and that's what this dude reminds me. Kalambe would have the Ali tassels on his shoes.
Yep,
and he was a stick and mover. But he let his hands go enough to where he could be entertaining. And this Michelle guy kind of reminds me of that. And since we're on the 135-pound division and prospects, up and comers, there's a local guy named Ruben Ace Torres, who's 18-0. Go to BoxRec, look him up. He's promoted by Thompson Boxing, who has kept him busy during the pandemic. They had him fight 3 times in 2020 and 3 times in 2021. And I like what I saw in those 6 fights. And I think he's just now stepped up to the 10-round level. So he might need a couple of fights, maybe get a couple showbox type appearances or whatever. But he's somebody, maybe by the end of this year or early next year, he could be a legitimate lightweight contender. And he's almost 6 feet tall. He's like an athletic boxer puncher, kind of like a Diego Corrales type, where he's going to stalk you down and cut your head off. Real explosive.
Speaking about Ali's, I'm friends with Nico, Ali Wash, and he's great. He's a great guy. I'm from
just graduated from college, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
and he's got hand strength coming through. I saw him back in the amateurs, and with one of my friends that actually is dating the sister, try to follow this, of Muhammad Ali's second wife. Okay. How random is that? Happens to be my next door neighbor. And, it's like, that's just meant to be. So he's like, he stops me one day. He's like, you want to go see a boxing match? I'm like, yeah, twist my arm. This is like my number one passion in life. A lot of people think it's music, it's boxing. So he's like, we're gonna go see Muhammad Ali's grandson. I'm like, okay, great. First round happens, and he asked me, he's like, what'd you think? What'd you think? I'm like, this guy's coming at him hard. Nico didn't look so hot, and with that name, and I told him that going in,
they're coming for him.
They're gonna gun after you, bro. They're coming after you. Like, you got that name. They want that. They want to go kick your ass. And he finished the fight. He got outbested, and they gave it to the right winner. Obviously, the verdict was correct. But then he turns pro, and he's kicking ass now. And when I went, and watched one of his fights, and I'm like, damn, he got big. He looks strong. Like, he's kicking ass, and he learned a lot of lessons. Like, he grew, like, in 3 years, he grew so much. And I'm not just saying it because it's Ali's grandson. He's got something there.
Well, you want the progeny of Ali to excel. I mean, Layla kicked ass. Like, Layla retired undefeated, and she just got inducted to the International Boxing Hall of Fame. So, I mean, Nico.
It helps when you have the resources, because that's something that a lot of fighters that have talent, they lack some of the resources. Even fighters in the amateurs, they don't get to fight at a lot of the bigger tournaments just because for the lack of resources. So they lack some development, but actually nowadays,
Nico's with Top Rank though. I mean, like, they're going to take care of him. Like, they know how. Listen, they know how to develop talent.
They're the best. Yes.
And they know how to get the most out of talent, right?
Hey, dude, like, it was so crazy. He sent me like a bunch of stuff. He sent me like Ali's, like, Cassius Clay, which I'm wearing right now, shorts and t-shirts. And I'm like, man, you're cool, bro. Like, I really appreciate that. He's going to be on the show soon. Great kid. He's got all the
hey, how old is he? How old is he?
Oh, he's like 22 or something. He's young.
Oh, he's that young. Okay.
He's young. He's young.
Right. Good.
But he's grown up like
got a lot of time
the last couple of years, and I'm rooting for him, man.
It's good to have time on your side if you're a boxer.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I keep telling my wife, I'm 43. I keep telling my wife, like, I might do one more. She's like, are you nuts?
Hey, Johnny, you better do it now.
Gotta do it now.
I'm telling you. 45 and after 45, that's when the injuries start to happen that you don't recover from. I'm serious, man. I don't care what you're doing. If you're pushing yourself hard, right, you can still get away with it. If you've treated your body well,
John's a stubborn guy.
In your early 40s, you can still get away with it. But something happens after like mid 40s where you will get an injury and you'll think you'll be okay. Like 2 weeks later, and you go back to the grind. You're like, oh, I made it worse, and that just happens over and over again.
Absolutely.
So do it now. Don't wait till your 50s. Let me tell you that much.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to do it in my 50s. Yeah. And we're speaking about up and comers. Rachel Charles, who we both know and love so much.
She's wonderful.
Oh, one of the greatest people you could meet on planet Earth.
Yeah, one of the most interesting people too.
Oh, very interesting, very delightful. Beautiful soul. She's got a lot of fighters up and coming, and you know what? She cares about these fighters. Like, it's almost like to the point where she's like a mother figure to them. And I think that's not even an exaggeration. I think that's just who she is.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know you know her very well. Let's talk about Ring Magazine before we let you go. Obviously, you guys are still doing a beautiful thing. There we go. Yep.
Is that the latest issue?
This should be on sale. Right. Yeah. Game changer. Some good stuff in here. Shakur Stevenson. We didn't even talk about Shakur.
I was going to go there next.
He emerged. Yeah. He's on here. So the article here, it's not even talking about him at junior lightweight. It's talking about him. It's talking to experts about how he would do against like the top 4 or 5 lightweights, like against Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia, Lomachenko, Devin Haney, Cambosos.
Why is Lopez out of the conversation?
Because he's going up to 140. I think his next fight's going to be.
But I think most of those guys are going to wind up at 140 at some point.
Yes.
I think
but they
And
can
Josh
still make.
Taylor
Oh
is
yeah,
just-
yeah. Devin's going there. Devin's
Yeah.
going to be there soon. Ryan Garcia. Oh my God, what a frame!
Yeah.
He's got a middleweight frame. He's not
He
like
got
he was a
bigger.
skinny kid. He's not a skinny kid anymore. That
No,
dude-
he got bigger.
big,
Same thing
he's
with
not
Nico.
gonna
He
be
got,
that
they got big.
135 much longer.
yeah,
Obviously.
no, he is huge, man. That
Um,
dude is huge.
What a loaded, stacked amount of fighters between 135 and 140. But
Yeah.
anyways, that being said, we want to know a little bit about the history of Ring Magazine. Briefly.
Briefly, 100 years old. That's what else is 100 years
How
old?
can you be
man?
brief on 100 years of history?
I mean, listen,
Yeah.
we've got some subscribers, right? People who have been subscribers to this magazine. I want to say there might be one or two who have subscribed to Ring Magazine for like 50 years.
Wow.
Like they're old. They're old dudes, man. Maybe since the 40s, even like late 40s. And it's like Ring Magazine is the only thing in existence that was around when they first started subscribing. You know what I'm saying? Like
Okay.
that's it.
So no
You know what
other
I'm saying? Like,
magazine,
it's like, yeah.
Is there any magazines that are currently running today that are older than the Ring? Or is
Well,
Ring the
yeah,
oldest?
like the New Yorker. I think that's been
Okay.
around since the 1800s.
But you guys are still in publication, which is awesome.
Yeah,
I
but I mean,
remember
how
I
many
have-
how many sports publications
I'm
are in print? I mean, there's the Sporting News. The Sporting News was around in the 1800s.
yeah.
You know,
I'm a
as
collector of Ring
baseball
Magazine.
newsletter, but it's not. It's been digital for like more than 10 years now.
I'm a collector of Ring Magazine, and what I love is with the old editions is first of all the covers were amazing, the arts, illustration were amazing, but the coupons in the back where you could like do like a mail-in for
Oh
like
yeah,
mail enhancement.
yeah. They talk about like dick pills and shit. They don't call it that. They got to talk around it. They got to be real colorful with their language, but it's funny. It's like, yeah, how?
Oh God, some of those advertisements were just
they're
they're
funny.
almost like more interesting than anything else. To be
Oh
honest,
no!
what the hell
Listen,
is this?
you could publish a book on like the advertisements from certain eras. You know, like sometimes, and same thing with comic books, old comic books. It's like, you know, mail in for this instruction manual on this kung fu death touch. Kill a
Yes.
guy by touching him. Like, what? I don't want to do that. What the fuck? Hey, tired of getting picked on? Like,
I just have
touch
to
a
show that
motherfucker
there.
and kill him. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this issue.
Oh yeah, that's probably like more than 10 years. That's probably like 2009.
2007 March.
Oh, 2007. Wow.
I think this is when it says Pac-Man's closing in on Pretty Boy, so Pretty Boy was still around.
Yep. It's weird. Pretty Boy was still around, and then he retired. He said he retired after beating Ricky Hatton in December of 2007. But all he did was just sit out 2008, and then he came back. He was supposed to come back in the May or summer of 2009, and he supposedly got like a rib injury in sparring. And there's like about 20 people who claim to have inflicted that injury or whatever. And that pushed back his comeback fight against Juan Manuel Marquez to September of 2009. But as soon as Mayweather came back and beat Marquez, and then Ricky Hatton got decapitated by Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah.
Then it was on that whole like, okay, who's number one? Who's really the pound for pound king?
That's when the 5 year whole
that's when the
fiasco started.
right. I call it the never ending story. That whole thing started like, will they fight? Won't they fight? And the Cold War.
That knockout by Manny Pacquiao on Hatton was probably one of the most ridiculous knockouts of all time.
It's up there.
I was terrified.
bad.
I thought Ricky was dead.
Yeah, I thought
swear
the
to
same
God.
thing.
I thought that for like about 10 seconds.
And then
oh my God! Oh no!
The
'Cause
Marquez
Carmen doesn't
knockout
forgive.
of Pacquiao was pretty devastating. Also,
I was gonna say,
Yeah, I wasn't there
does
for
not
that
forgive
one.
Marquez starching
cold.
him in the fourth fight against Pacquiao. You know, he ain't gonna get up, Jim. He ain't gonna get up, Jim.
He's not getting
I
up.
was
Jim.
like,
He's not
I'm
getting up.
watching this. I'm like, what is
Yeah.
going on?
Oh, I
dude?
couldn't believe it, and I honestly thought that Pacquiao was closing in on the kill. I thought. Here's what I was thinking.
Absolutely.
Here's what I was thinking. Even though the fight was tit for tat and Pacquiao had been dropped earlier, I was thinking if Pacquiao doesn't knock him out in this round, the fight's going to be over in the next round because of cuts. Because Marquez's face is literally going to fall off.
Oh, he looked like shit. He was,
and then
was
just
bleeding.
like that, it's over.
Yeah.
And I thought Pacquiao was done. I was like, he's going to retire. It's over.
It was at the last second too. Like literally, Marquez just timed that shot perfectly that it
Marquez
was just.
was
That was kind of like Davis and Romero. You know, you just walked right into that shot, and it was, that was all she wrote. The only difference is Romero got up, Pacquiao was out cold. So
no, he was snoring.
Yeah.
People told me that were actually at the fight that he was snoring. He was asleep. Like, I'm being serious, man.
So those memes were correct, where they had like a pillow.
Yeah. He was out.
That was accurate. Yeah.
So Bible of Boxing. How did the ring get that name? The Bible of Boxing.
I think my theory is that Nat Fleischer, who was a sports editor, and was a fan of the publications, which was a new thing, in the early, like the turn of the 20th century, right? Early 1900s, like a publication dedicated solely to sports. They were around. You had like the Police Gazette. It wasn't 100% sport. The Police Gazette was like, creepy cop news. You know what I mean? The police blotter, like murders and shit like that, like salacious shit, and baseball and boxing and maybe horse racing. And those were the only big time sports around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the sporting news was just dedicated to baseball. And Fleischer admired that, like, wow, a publication that's just following one sport, America's sport, baseball. And the sporting news called itself the Bible of baseball. So I think when Fleischer, I don't know if he's ever admitted to this or whatever, when Fleischer started a boxing magazine, a publication dedicated to the sweet science, he said, hey, the Bible of boxing. It's got a ring to it.
It's a beautiful
and that
story.
Was that was in 1922.
Okay.
And the reason you couldn't have had a boxing magazine dedicated to the sport earlier than that is that boxing wasn't even legal in the state of New York until 1920. And in other places, in many states, it was illegal, just like mixed martial arts, right?
Yeah,
in the 90s, when it started up, and in the 2000s, there were a lot of jurisdictions that they were like,
a lot of those exhibition fights used to happen back then.
Right, because it didn't have weight. The regulation wasn't there, right?
Like those newspaper decisions, is that what they called them?
Right, or it was just underground. It was just unofficial. It was like it would happen at at sporting clubs or whatever, or outside of city limits, wherever cops couldn't bust you, right? It was a renegade sport. Let's just leave it
underground.
At that.
Yep.
Right,
Mixed
and just like
arts on the East Coast, they didn't want to allow that in New York.
No,
New
for a long
Jersey,
time. Right. So they needed. It was when the Fertittas bought the UFC, and under the whatever the corporation of Zuffa, and they understood getting it regulated by the commission, and so they worked with the Nevada State Athletic Commission to put forth rules that were that would protect the safety of the fighters. So you can't hit a guy in the neck. They took away elbows. Mm-hmm. They put in weight classes, right? Mm-hmm. So they had all that kind of thing. You couldn't have a lightweight against a heavyweight, because you used to see that in the old UFC. You'd have like a 150-pound kickboxer against a sumo wrestler who was like 300 pounds.
Like 6 times in a night with like Nike sneakers on and sweatpants. Yeah.
So they were like, no, they're gonna have gum shields. They're gonna have their hands wrapped. We're gonna
make it
the
legit.
Whole thing. They worked with the commission, and so once they got it sanctioned in Nevada and California, that helped it, because they could do big fights. Those are big markets, right? Los Angeles or the Bay Area, San Antonio, right? And then of course Las Vegas, and then they also had New Jersey, right? So they could do Atlantic City and around there.
Prudential Center,
and eventually, I think New York held out for a long time, But they eventually got it. But then, once you had those big states, the other states fell in line. The same thing with boxing, right? Boxing needed New York to, the big city to say, okay, it's legal. And a law was passed in 1920. And at that same time, the previous year, 1919, a super exciting heavyweight champion was crowned, and that was Jack Dempsey. And Jack Dempsey wasn't just exciting. He drew a lot of attention, and he put butts in seats, and he had a great promoter in Tex Rickard who was able to get $1 million gates, and who was like way ahead of his time because he was filming that stuff, right? He was like filming that stuff when, it's like, who's going to watch this? He's like, he was a forward thinker like that. And so it was the right time for a boxing magazine to come into existence, because we had a heavyweight champion that everybody adored, and there was sort of a trickle down effect. You know what I mean? Dempsey's big, and then you start talking about who could challenge Dempsey. So other heavyweights, emerged, like a Gene Tunney or whatever, or the guy from Argentina, Luis Firpo. And they have a wild shootout where, Dempsey gets knocked out of the ring and Firpo gets knocked down like 15 times or something like that. Everyone goes crazy about that kind of stuff. And just regular news outlets are buzzing about not just the heavyweight champion, but about boxing. And you have other guys underneath him, like, Harry Greb or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So
it was absolutely huge.
Joe Gans and all these guys, so he's like, it's the time to put out a publication. And the amazing thing is it literally was in publication from 1922 to 2022, which is like, that's mind boggling.
It's like the first magazine I ever picked up outside of like the video game magazine, when I was younger. And my father got me into boxing, and he had a bunch of them around the house, the Ring magazines. And then I just started collecting them, framing them, posting them, stuff like that around the house. And it's just, it was one of those things when I was at work, and I still read. And I love that you guys are still in publication, because a lot of people don't read anymore, like print, like they do it online. But I actually like to have a copy and have it in my hand physically to read it and study it. And plus, like, the thing about the Ring that I love the most is that the rankings really matter. They're legit. There's a reason why there's a Ring title,
That's right.
Absolutely.
And we're transparent too. Let's
exactly.
who's on the ratings panel. I'm going to let you know every week, or at least every other week, how everybody voted, what the suggestions were. I'm going to let you know. You don't have to agree with it, because they're rankings,
They're
sometimes
rankings.
you're just never going to agree, right? And sometimes there's not a wrong answer. You might look at the pound for pound and say, in a way, at number one, nah, it should be Crawford, or nah, it should be Alexander Usyk. And I'm not going to argue with you. Guess what? I'm like, yeah.
So that being said,
it might be
Canelo. You think Canelo should have dropped that far on the pound for pound list, considering he did move up in weight. He started his career at 150, or I believe 147 or 140. Started his career out.
Yeah,
and
he was first ranked. Yeah, he was first ranked as a welterweight.
Yeah,
and he won his first title at 154.
And now he's fighting not just a bigger guy, but a boxer.
Yeah, a talented guy.
And we all know that Canelo has struggled, against boxers. Yep. So essentially he's fighting probably the worst style matchup.
Yeah, we punished him for challenging himself. Yes, that happened. He dropped
too much weight.
Honestly, I don't like it when that happens. I don't like it, whatever.
I mean, look at Roy Jones when he moved up to heavyweight, came back down. I mean, if you're moving around,
he dropped when he lost to Tarver. He didn't drop out of the pound for pound, but he dropped. And not just because he lost, because he got knocked the fuck out.
I'm not privy to your pound for pound rankings, what they are currently. What does the magazine have, right? I'm not going to ask you your personal rankings. I just want to know
I don't know if I do have a personal pound for pound.
What's the top 5 that Ring actually has in boxing? I know it's not a topic that most people, I don't really pay too much attention to it. I don't know if you do. I'm just curious what the magazine's current ranking.
It's a good pound for pound. Yeah. I'm gonna try to do it off the top of my head, because I should know it, right? Naoya Inoue number 1, Alexander Usyk number 2, Terrence Crawford number 3, Errol Spence number 4. Damn, who's number 5?
Canelo?
I don't think
Tyson
it's Canelo.
Fury.
Damn,
I got Tyson Fury at my 5.
I gotta
agree
go
with your
look.
top-
All right, I think I got my top 4. Let's see if I'm right. And if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, shame on me. But then again, I have not been a pound for pound guy.
And
for
to
many
be honest,
years,
like Fury
I've been like,
versus
whatever.
White KO was ridiculous. Like,
Oh, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't even talk
dude,
about that.
What is going
And it was
on
a
with
huge-
Tyson Fury,
event.
bro?
Yeah. No,
He
he's
is
being
just on
Tyson Fury.
fire.
Oh, number 5 is Canelo. Hey, that's a
Okay.
good top
All right.
5.
Yeah, that's
By
a
the
good.
way,
That's a good top 5.
If you have Canelo higher than number 5, if you think, hey, dude,
Yeah.
he's really
I don't
like
think you
a
should have dropped to
middleweight.
5, but
Right,
you can't
yeah.
keep him
I
at
get
number
it.
1 because, I mean,
Yeah.
well, okay. That
That's a
being
good top
said,
5, though, right? Those
me and
guys are
John
awesome.
talked. I didn't see the decision with Canelo and Bivol as being how would you say? I saw Canelo win his share of rounds, but the thing is,
Yeah, no, he
I
wasn't
saw
blank.
Canelo
Yeah,
only win the early rounds,
yeah.
and then I saw Bivol basically win probably the last 7 rounds. I think
Yes.
Bivol won.
Yeah, he
all of them.
outworked him.
Yeah.
Bivol outworked
So-
him.
I think you can
Yeah.
make a case for Canelo winning 5 rounds. I don't think you can make a
Yeah.
case for him winning more than 5.
But
I think what was shocking is all the judges.
being live, I may have only given Canelo 2 or 3 rounds. Just so you know.
But
Live.
all the
Maybe
judges
I need to watch it
had
back, yeah.
all the rounds scored the same. I mean, has
was
that ever
weird.
happened
I
in the
don't know.
history of boxing that you can think of?
I don't know. Maybe
I can't-
maybe with Ward Kovalev. Maybe.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they all
Yeah,
had the same
yeah,
at the end.
They all
At
had
the end of the
same
night, they all had
scorecard.
the
Yep.
same scorecard. Yeah, 114, 113.
No, but I'm referring to every
That was fishy,
judge
too.
scored every round the same.
Which never
I
happened.
don't know.
And
That's
Canelo,
weird.
and yeah, that was
I think that's fishy. I got to be honest with you. I
that
think that's
was
weird.
what
I
was
mean,
mind-boggling to me a little bit. But
I thought they were all bending over backwards for Canelo
Yeah,
in those
I
early
think-
rounds, because didn't they all give Canelo like the first 3 rounds or something like that, or first something? I don't know.
they had to have, because he didn't win anything in the second half of the
No,
fight.
and that's, and I don't like this, but like the industry wants to, they bend over backwards for the stars, and they've done it forever, right?
Yeah.
And it's not fair to the star, because then like
Yeah.
especially hardcore fans, they hate that guy.
yeah,
Like they hold it against that fighter, especially if it happens more than once. They're like, I hate you. And it's like, that's the industry. That's not that fighter.
I
But
gotta-
mean,
The fighter
when
is
you're making
going-
40
yeah.
when you're making 40 million plus dollars, that's the investment. That's where the investment
Yeah.
is. So
yeah.
you kind of have to look at it, the bigger
Yeah.
picture. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but
But
boxing
really,
is-
in a big picture sense, it hurts the sport. It turns
it
off
does.
people.
It does.
turns folks off.
I'm just looking at it from the aspect of the people that run the sport, which technically the promoters run the sport, because as you know, I mean, we've all been around this game a long time. The boxers are paid, or the officials are paid by the promoter. So it seems like there's a conflict of interest that's always
Sure.
going to go on there.
Yep.
Not screaming corruption or anything, but it's just subconsciously, it's like sometimes they know who they're supposed to vote for.
Of course.
When rounds are close, and you
Of
kind of
course.
see that. Unless you're Manny Pacquiao against Tim Bradley, that's a different
Yeah.
story for another day. So
yeah. There's weird.
So-
there's weird things. Yeah. Weird
I
decisions.
want to bring up Shakur Stevenson from Newark, New Jersey, where originally I was very close to like 10 minutes away from where I lived. Named after one of my favorite rappers, if not my favorite rapper of all time, Tupac
Yeah.
Shakur. Shakur Stevenson, guys, fellas, he looked really, really impressive. He's just really growing as a professional.
He's such a talent.
Yeah.
And he's just so and he was a great amateur talent. Obviously, he was an Olympic silver medalist, so he was an elite boxer as an amateur. And everybody knew once he turned pro that he was going to be special. It took him maybe 2 years to gain his man strength, and once he had his man
Absolutely.
strength behind that technique, He's one of those guys who looks untouchable. So he's also one of those guys where people say, hey, how come he's not in the pound for pound? And I get it. I get where they're coming from, because they're just kind of imagining, hey, nobody beats this guy at 135. Nobody beats this guy at 140. He's going to be great. So why not put him in the pound for pound now? And I get that.
He needs the resume to get there.
But I want to see the fight. I want to see the fight.
He belongs there. I think he belongs there. But the thing is, he's just not entertaining. I mean, he's just not. There's just something about.
He has to be in with a very special fighter to be entertaining, because otherwise he's going to put handcuffs on a lot of guys.
100%.
He really is. Just like Devin Haney did against Kambosos.
Yeah, I mean, that was a master class, but it just was not.
I think Shakur's even better. Even better.
I agree. Everything you're saying,
you
Dougie,
see
I
it.
agree.
I don't see. I think Shakur's greatest challenge, much like Floyd Mayweather, will be, how am I going to cross over? And I think he can do it. Obviously Mayweather had to create the money persona, right? And he had to be in an era where somebody like an aging De La Hoya would be like, okay, let's fight. I'm probably going to lose because I'm old, but let's fight. And it's because it's going to be a huge event, and we're both going to get crazy money. So why not do it? Right. And I think De La Hoya was also thinking of his promotional company. Like,
so that being said,
infuse my promotional company with some juice. Right. So that fight happens in 2007, and then you get the crossover. Right. And I think Shakur needs somebody like that, like the stepping stone, the launch pad. But I will say this, he's not like charismatic, but he does have personality. And he's in a relationship with a young woman. He proposed to her after winning the Ring Magazine junior lightweight title against Oscar Valdez. And my daughters know who she is because she's a rapper. Her rap name is Young Lyric. She was in the first season of a reality series called The Fight Game. Not The Fight Game, God. The Rap Game. my brain is only set to boxing. Bro. Yeah, I know. No, it's the Rap Game. She didn't win it, but she was like one of the better talents showcased. Okay. And is
there any good rap talent nowadays? Really?
No.
I'm
a grumpy old man when it comes to hip hop. No, I'm like.
I think we're just old heads. So we're you can probably see behind me the turntables.
1986. Yeah, 1986 to 1993. That's like.
We were spoiled. Our generation, like, we had such great music and such great rap that, in hip hop, that nowadays when we hear this, it's just like,
I don't recognize it. I don't recognize it as hip hop, though.
But I think our parents despised our music as well, so it's a generational thing. It's always
like that. These kids today, they say. But one thing that cannot be denied. The Rocky IV soundtrack. Now, this is not hip hop, but this is the greatest soundtrack of all time. I had a friend the other day. He's hit me up. He's like, yo, man, I can't get motivated to go to the gym. I'm like, dude, put on Rocky IV soundtrack and then come back to me and tell me what's good. Speaking of what's good, Dougie, I want to ask you a couple questions about boxing movies. Your favorite boxing films of all time. I know mine. What's yours?
Raging Bull, the first Rocky, an old one called The Harder They Fall is probably number one. I think that was Humphrey Bogart's final film. And I liked it because it was, the protagonist, or like the key character played by Bogart, was a former sports writer. So it was from that perspective. And he's invited to join a promotional outfit or a managerial outfit that was building up this fighter from South America who really didn't have any talent. He was just a big guy, but they were going to build him up, have him, kind of barnstorm the country and knock over Ham and Eggers and kind of build up a resume, and it still happens today. That's the amazing thing about that movie. And then they were going to cash out. They were going to feed him to the heavyweight champion, who I think was portrayed by Max Baer. And also, I think part of their team was a former fighter. The character was a former fighter, but he was actually played by a former heavyweight champion, Jersey Joe Walcott, who I thought was great in it. So there's all these cool little cameos from actual fighters from that era. But the whole thing is they build him up, and of course he gets annihilated by this heavyweight champion. And there's the big cash out, and everybody gets paid except for the fighter. And the sports writer who he played the role of the publicist for this whole campaign, right? So it's his job to basically tell lies. He knows this guy can't fight. He knows this guy has no shot against the heavyweight champion, but it's his job to get the public interested in this up-and-comer from South America who can defeat anybody. And at some point, the fighter himself believes that, he's a killer, right? You know what I mean? And his conscience gets the better of him, which is a good thing. His conscience is like, I can't do this. And he actually goes to like the money guy, the accountant, and like, there's got to be something wrong. We're all cashing out, and the fighter's left with nothing. And he's like, let me show you the books. Let me show you the investment we put in with this guy. Let me show you the training expenses, this and this and this and that, and he's like, I don't care. Like it can't end like this. He's got nothing. We're sending him back to South America with nothing. And I think he gives him, I'm giving you the whole fucking movie. I'm sorry, but watch it anyway.
No, it's all good. I'm loving it.
Just for that scene, just for the accountant saying like, dude, this is reality, man. Let me break it down to you. And I'm like, oh my God, this movie is like made in like the fucking 50s or something. And it's like, it's the same story today. The same fucking story. It's like, oh shit.
It's way,
like, yeah. And he's just like, yeah. And Bogart, he just like, I think, Bogart gives his share to the heavyweight. And here, go back to South America, share this with your family. Your father will be proud. Please don't come back to boxing, Yeah. And then, he's kind of left with, okay, I did this whole thing. I don't have any money. I'm out of the news business. What do I do? And he starts writing like an investigative story or like an investigative series exposing boxing, right? The corruption in boxing. And I think he titles it The Harder They Fall. That's how the movie ends. So just as a journalist, as a writer, as an editor, you know what I mean? As somebody who's also kind of seen the promotional side of the sport and how, where the money comes from and how it's disseminated and where it goes. That movie's special to me.
Yeah,
it's probably The Harder They Fall. I'm going to go with that as the number one.
Yeah, I like it. And you connect with it because the industry very well.
Yeah.
Kev, what about you, man? What do you got? What's your favorite boxing movie?
Wow. I don't know. I mean, there's so many good boxing movies. There's some really good ones. I can't really say. I mean, I liked Raging Bull. That's definitely one that always kind of sticks out in your mind.
Yeah, it's very artistic.
There's this movie. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I think it's called The Greatest. And Muhammad Ali.
Oh wow,
plays
that's
himself.
sad. Yeah,
yeah.
That one was. I love that movie. A lot of great documentaries. If I could add those in.
When We Were Kings.
Yes.
When We Were Kings. I love the one. The Assault in the Ring.
Ooh.
I believe Assault in the Ring was the one with Luis Resto.
Yep.
And Billy Collins.
With the hands, with the gloves.
And then there was also the documentary about Emil Griffith. That was a great one. I can't remember what the name.
Yeah, that was really good.
I'm more a documentary person when it comes to boxing.
Champions Forever. You ever see that?
That was excellent.
I haven't seen
That's
that.
fun.
There's a
very good
movie
match.
called Monkey on My Back that I'm actually about to watch. I started watching a little bit of it. It's about from
Barney
the 50s.
Ross?
Barney Ross.
Yeah.
I started watching that, so I'm interested in
I've never
finishing
seen that.
up.
Cool.
I heard it's it's supposed to be a classic. There's some pretty good actors in there. I mean, there's just so many good boxing. I mean,
Requiem for a Heavyweight. You guys should check that out. There's a teleplay and a film version. Yeah.
For me, Rocky 2, I'm going to tell you why. I love the way the movie starts off because they're both in wheelchairs.
Yeah.
They're both all beat up. They're yelling at each other, and Mickey's there and he's got Rocky's back and he's like, he tells Apollo, he kicked your ass or whatever he says. And it's just like, it's like real. It seems like,
that's
what
reality,
fighting is. And they're in the hospital and then like, they're in like, remember we talked about Mickey Ward and Arturo Gotti earlier. They were in the hospital together. Now
Yeah.
they were a little bit different. They
Yeah.
actually, were cordial with each other, but Rocky tried to talk to Apollo. Apollo was very stubborn. He had that like Ali persona.
Pride. Yeah.
Right. Pride. Very prideful.
Yeah.
And then in Rocky 2, like he's getting all this hate mail. Like, how'd you let this bum beat you? This guy
That's
that no one
reality.
knew.
That's
Or
how
like
it is. Yep.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
obviously Rocky didn't win, but he won over the audience.
Right.
And he couldn't take it. He was like talking to his wife about it, and he was all upset.
Yeah.
And then you have this beautiful rematch. Obviously there's a lot of drama that goes in front of it with Adrian getting sick during her pregnancy. She
Yeah.
doesn't want Rocky to box. They're saying his eye is fucked. It's just there's a lot. It's like if you really know the impact of. I mean, it's a fine film. It's an excellent film.
No, it is. It brings the reality. Here's what I remember.
It brings the reality.
Here's
Yep.
what I remember from Rocky 2. Rocky trying to benefit from that exposure of fighting the heavyweight champion and trying to do commercials and not being able to do it.
And it
Not
wouldn't
being
work.
able to read his lines right.
Can't read. Yeah.
Right. And directors getting angry at him. It's, and that kind of like it hurts too. It's like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
it's painful.
I think in the final round or rounds, I haven't watched this movie in decades, of their rematch.
Double knockdown.
Apollo, the double knockdown, but also Apollo Creed saying there ain't going to be no rematch. Or no, maybe that was the first movie.
First
Is that
one.
the first one where he's like, ain't going to
Yeah.
be no rematch because he's
Yeah.
so beat up.
First one. Yeah.
All right, so there was a rematch. So never mind.
Yeah.
I'm getting my memory mixed up. That happens, man. That
But
happens.
We're getting over it.
there's so many Rocky
Yeah.
movies that they kind of all
Yeah.
just mesh into one. It's like The Godfather. You know what I mean?
It's an incredible series, man.
Yeah.
Franchise, actually. Yeah.
Oh,
So
dude,
before you go, Dougie, I wanted to ask you, why boxing? What made you want to get involved in this crazy business that boxing is?
I'm not like a big sports guy. Like apart from boxing, like in the 70s and 80s when I was a kid and I was a teenager, the sport that I was attracted to the most was track and field. I would watch that and I would read up on that and I would memorize all the world records and all the great milers, all the great sprinters and the great jumpers and all that kind of stuff. I liked it. I liked track and field because it's really an individual sport and boxing is an individual sport. And Muhammad Ali is like the greatest individual personality, definitely of my lifetime. I've never experienced anything like that. And by the mid to late 70s, he was a crossover star like nobody had ever seen. Like everybody just like, he was polarizing in the early 70s, right? And during his exile and in the 60s, right? But, after he regained the heavyweight championship, he was so media savvy and such a people person and people's champion. When I saw him speak and I saw his interviews with Howard Cosell, I had to watch him fight. And when I watched him fight, I had no understanding of boxing. I just wanted Muhammad Ali to win, and he did. And I was just hooked. And then not long after discovering Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard emerged, right out of the 1976 Olympics. And I watched it was a quick rise, man. It seemed like, one telecast I'm watching, he's like this hot young prospect, like, he's just starting out or something like that. That's how they kind of framed it. And to me, after watching Ali, who I didn't realize he was past his prime and he's a heavyweight. And that's back, when Ali's like doing the rope-a-dope with everybody. Seeing Sugar Ray Leonard, just like that, this electric dynamic boxer puncher. Yeah. I was like, this guy's like Bruce Lee. I was like, here's an American Bruce Lee and he's active and this is real and it's happening. And so whenever he fought, I would look in TV Guide and mark it down. I'm going to be watching when it was on, regular television, and I would watch that. And then I was surprised, the next day at school, other kids were talking about the Sugar Ray Leonard fight. I was like, oh, boxing is a thing that people are into. And I can talk about boxing with these kids who I didn't talk to before. And so like I'm, at recess or on the schoolyard before school, we're talking about Sugar Ray Leonard and all. And by 79, 1980, when Leonard is a champion, I have to read about it. You know, I have to know, oh, he's going to fight Tommy Hearns. Oh my God, you know, and it's not enough. The newspaper articles aren't enough. So I got to go to the magazines. And so, you know, we're talking about Ring Magazine, you know, maybe we're talking about Boxing Illustrated. KO may have just begun around that time.
And he
But
was on
wherever I could read about it. I would go to the library and read newspapers. By 1980, we were living in Springfield, Missouri, and our local newspaper didn't cover boxing at all. So I went to the library and I would pull out the newspaper from New York City, from Atlantic City, from Las Vegas, from Boston, from Philadelphia, sometimes Miami. And I would read those boxing columnists, those the boxing writers at that time, you know, especially from the East Coast. I was reading, you know, Michael Katz and the late Michael Marley and Wally Matthews and Ron Borges, who just got inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. The late George Kimball. Those are the Boston guys. I forgot who it was. There was like somebody who wrote for the Reno Gazette. You know, I'd pull all these newspapers out and I'd read for hours in the newspaper, man. I'd take notes, you know.
I know you do, man.
I did. And when I would buy a boxing magazine, I could show you boxing magazines from 81, 82. I was circling like names in the, you know, in the rankings. I was doing little mythical matchups, you know, in my head, like, well, what if he fights him and this and that? And, oh, this guy should be ranked higher. So there's like a little arrow, you know, moving a number 4 up to number 2 and all that. I was geeking out at that early age. I fell out of it a little bit after Sugar Ray Leonard retired in 82. I was kind of like, that's my guy. And he was sort of my focal point. At the time, I got more into comic books and comic collecting, and comic books were awesome, like 81, 82, 83. And by the mid 80s, comic books were just amazing. There were some great creators and stuff coming out at that time. And it was actually Sugar Ray coming back to fight Marvin Hagler that got me back into reading about boxing. The fight was announced in like 86. Didn't happen until like April 87. And that entire time, like a 6-month period, I'm getting every boxing magazine I can that's talking about this fight. So I go from collecting comic books back to collecting boxing magazines, you know, and then by, you know, so the late 80s, I'm a fanatic. I'm a boxing.
Have you ever
fanatic.
checked
So,
out?
And then I'm in college. I'm in college and I'm taking news writing classes and doing stuff for the newspaper and doing internships. You know, I was a media student and you know, with a focus in journalism. So really, it's only natural that once I graduate, and I went to grad school. I went to Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism. Once I graduate, I'm like, hey, if I can write about boxing, my favorite thing, why wouldn't I? So, yeah.
Right. Have you ever checked Steve Cunningham's comics?
No, I know he's a comic book guy. I know there's a couple guys. Steve Cunningham, Alan
He
Green.
illustrates too. He
He
draws.
draws. I didn't know that. No, I gotta check him out. Yeah, I gotta check it out.
He's been on my show a couple times. Excellent guy. He's a huge comic book person.
Yeah,
And,
a real sharp dude too. Yeah, real
Oh,
decent fella.
excellent human being. Just amazing. And then when he was sharing his comics with me, and he told me that he draws all of them by himself.
I had no idea. I should know this. Yeah.
I was like, wow.
I gotta. You know what? I gotta get him. I want to get. Maybe not for the next issue, but the issue after that, I want an issue with a lot of illustration. Matter of fact, we just finished. I'm not going to tell you who it is. We just did a special issue on a great fighter, and I'm real happy that I was able to include the artwork of Amanda Kelly, who I only know through like boxing Twitter, you know, social media. But I know she paints. She paints these great, you know, depictions of these fighters or whatever. And I got her in touch with this fighter's brother. And I said, hey, ask him, you know, what images of this fighter are you know, most important to him. And he gave her a couple of images and she shared them with me. And I said, man, you should do that one. I remember that fight. Yeah, you should do that. And she did. She painted it. And it's so satisfying seeing that in Ring Magazine. I'm like, wow, it's a 2-page spread. And I'm like, and it's my story, by the way, too. And I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. It's what it's all about. So I'd like an issue with like a lot of that. I mean, boxing photographs are awesome, but like boxing
what
art
I've noticed
is amazing.
Is
boxing paintings are amazing. Yeah.
What I noticed what you do is like the old school Ring magazine. I have a lot of old school Ring magazine.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's all art. It's not
Yeah.
like photography. A lot of the old ones, like when you see
Yeah.
Archie Moore and like all these great fighters, like it's illustration and
Yeah.
it's
Great
beautiful.
cartoon illustrations. and
Yeah,
some-
on the inside, the cartoonist, right?
And I noticed that
late
you've
great
been
Ted
doing that.
Carroll. Yeah,
I
love
noticed
that.
you've been doing that recently.
I want that. Yeah.
I think that's
So
great.
Steve Cunningham. Okay, I knew he did a comic. I thought he wrote it. I thought somebody else did the
No,
art. I
he
didn't know
draws
did
too, man.
All right, well, I gotta
Yeah,
reach out
he's
to SS
super
Cunningham.
sharp.
Awesome,
Super
man.
sharp, man.
I should've known
I want to
that.
give a shout out before we let you go. Mario Lopez had a female fighter called Ruby Tucker from New Jersey, who's 8 years
What?
old. If you all have not seen her train,
Wait, what's her name?
Ruby
what's her
Tucker?
Ruby.
Yep,
Ruby Tucker. Okay, that's
Ruby
catchy.
Tucker.
I like that.
8 years old. She trains with her father like every day. She's been boxing since she's been 3 years old. And she was on, man. She's only
Okay.
8.
You
Bro,
can walk
she
now,
throws the
so let's
right
put
hand-
these gloves on.
She would kick my ass, and she shows up on Axis with Mario Lopez
Oh,
wearing
wow.
gloves, all badass. I'm like,
Oh yeah, you know Mario's a real
amazing.
fan. Mario knows.
oh,
his shit,
Mario's
too. Mario's
huge.
a real
Yeah,
fan.
huge fan.
Yeah.
Huge
And he's
fan.
crazy too. He's like you. He's still trying. He'll still get in there and spar.
Oh, yeah. I
I'm like,
no
no.
problems, no hesitation.
No sparring. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
dude.
Wow.
I
Hats
throw
off.
down-
Hats off to both of you guys. Seriously. No, I mean it. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. But I worry about Mario, man. Dude, you've had some injuries, man. You had like some, I don't know, tendons snap or some shoulder.
Like, he looks like he's in pretty
Injury,
good
he had
condition.
Achilles. No, I know, but those injuries, man. Like I say, the
Yeah.
older you get,
Oh, they
the
catch
longer
up,
it takes to
yeah.
get back from that.
Dude, I was
Hats off to
training
you
in
guys.
high altitude with my sensei in Northern California recently, high elevation. And I'm sending my wife like videos of us like doing weapon fighting, stick fighting, karate,
Uh-oh.
boxing. She's like, what?
Oh, geez.
And luckily, everything worked out good. There's a thing called Bob, if people don't know. Bob is like a punch dummy, and it weighs 300 pounds. And my sensei was trying to show me how to knock it over with kicks. And then, okay, so I go to bed, and I think, I'm staying at his house. Great guy. And I'm staying at his house. And what happens is I wake up after meditating during my sleep about how I'm going to knock Bob down. So Adam McKinley is his name. He's trained with great people associated to Karate Kid, Cobra Kai, etc. So I go outside and I knock this fucker down, man. And I felt so good about it. I'm like, yes, I learned how to do the leverage.
Yeah.
But then I punch it, not to brag, and then I knock it down with a punch. And my sensei's like, whoa, how did you do that? And I'm like, dude, I did exactly what you told me to do with my center of gravity, my balance, and Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee type shit.
I was gonna say your chi energy was part of that.
Yes,
because
exactly.
You dreamt
Dougie.
about it, you thought about it all night while your body was resting.
Yep.
You were like visualizing this. You were dreaming it.
Yep.
As you're collecting all this spirit force. So it wasn't just like technique and physical strength; it was spirit strength.
No,
You had your
I
chi
had
energy
exactly.
in that
exactly,
punch.
Dougie. I had to go out
That's
there.
how
and just-
you had the iron fist.
And homeboy's like, what the hell did you do? I'm like, all right, here we go. I'm like, there's different like techniques, but I'm like, I visualized it. I saw it in my head, and you just do it,
Yep.
And then next thing I know, we go mountain climbing. That's a whole other story for another
That's awesome.
day. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah,
inspirational.
No mountain climbing for me. Yeah.
Dougie, you're a runner, man. You're always going running. Tell us about those
Uh,
runs before we let you go.
Yeah, it's not as much as I used to. That's one of my goals is this summer to get a good pair of running shoes and get back to that. And my real goal is to get my daughters involved, especially my 18-year-old, because she's a homebody. So I want to get her out and spend some quality time with her. And she's going to start classes in the fall at Santa Monica College. So it makes sense. Hey, let's go hang out at Santa Monica College. Let's do those stairs, do the bleacher stairs. Let's run some laps. Let's do some sprints. You know, I might do some distance after we're done with that. You don't have to join me with that. I'll have my music, and and then let's just walk around. Let's walk around Santa Monica. Let's walk around the college, that area, and all. And so you're familiar with it before you start school here. So that's like the real goal. Correct. It's like this month, July and August, is to get back to like some real track training and a little bit of distance, not a lot, but a little bit.
And you're still based in Southern California? Yeah.
I'm in Inglewood. I'm not far from the Forum or from LAX, you know.
And who's your run partners? It's always good to have a training partner.
Oh, well, I got a coach, man. I got Dave Schwartz, man. You know, the biggest boxing, the greatest boxing fan on this planet, you know. The only boxing fan I know who saw his first boxing match in 1946. All these fights, all these great fights we talk about, my friend Dave was there. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, you know, you talk about like, I don't know, like the fight of the year, Joe Frazier versus Jerry Query in 1969. He's there. He's there. He's at Madison Square Garden. He's betting on the fight. You know what I mean? It's just like, what? It's so cool. Yeah, no.
What's the best fight? What's the best fight you've attended as? Doesn't necessarily need to be as a media member. Just in your life, the best fight that you've seen live.
Wow, best fight live. Well, I mean, in 2005, there was Corrales Castillo won. Diego.
I was just going to mention that fight.
I think that's hard to top.
Crazy fight, and I remember talking with a lot of people, including Corrales' trainer Joe Goosen, and definitely I was talking with Rich Murata afterwards, and you know he'd seen a lot of great fights, and we were like, I don't think they can ever duplicate that. I think they gave everything they've got in that fight, and I had to say, and you know we were right about that. In fact, matter of fact, a couple days after that fight, I'm getting together with Coach, and Coach says Corrales will never win another fight.
Wow,
like, that's all he had. He gave everything in that fight. Like he'll continue fighting. It's what he does. Yeah. He gets paid well to do it. He's going to continue fighting. He's never going to win another fight. And he was right about that. I felt the same way after the third match between Israel Vasquez and Rafael Marquez. That was off the hook. Incredible 12 rounds. And Vasquez was never the same afterwards.
Yeah. I think that was
those are great fights.
Three out of
but
the
sometimes these guys have great fights and they have another great fight. Another, like Eric Morales was like that forever. Just great fight after great fight. You lose count. But his first fight with Marco Antonio Barrera in 2001, one of the greatest fights I was ever ringside for. Like my heart was beating the whole time. Like these guys are so good. How do they do it? Yeah. You know?
And Corrales, like I actually was out because I was, dating an ex at the time, and she was giving me shit about watching boxing every Saturday. Sure. She's like, "You got to take me out on a Saturday night."
Oh
yeah, all right.
I'm married. I missed a lot of boxing because of my wife.
Yeah. So I go out and I come home. I get the VHS from my father, like I always pick up, and I'm like, "How was the fight?" He's like, "This is the greatest fucking fight I've ever seen in my entire life." I'm like, "You're
exaggerating." All right.
And I'm like, are you serious? Like, it was that good? He's like, you missed it. He's like, we could put it on right now and I'll watch it again. He's like, I watched it 3 times.
Oh,
yeah. I'm like, no shit. And I'm watching it. Castillo Corrales. And then the best is like, Goosen, you better get in fucking side of him right now.
You got to get it fucking done or something. Yeah. That's hard. Tough love, man. Yeah,
dude. And
it was the truth.
It was so dramatic. It was just like one of those things, man. Like it was like I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Movie. Yeah, it was beyond a movie. Yeah, it was.
And then I was pissed off. You also mentioned, Marquez and Velasquez is that the third fight.
Yeah,
one of my best friends gets married on that date, and I told him I was the best man in the wedding. I told him, like, I'm so pissed off at you. He's like, why? I'm like, you just booked a wedding on like one of the biggest fights that is on the calendar this year.
You knew it was going to be incredible.
I knew it was going to be incredible.
Hey, that was in Carson, right? Yeah. And StubHub was sold out, And they actually had I think Jack Nicholson was there. You actually had some celebrities there to see 122 pounders, 222 pound Mexican fighters.
I think I covered all three of those bouts for ring
jealous.
Yeah, they were amazing.
So
actually, no, I think the third one I didn't cover it. I just wanted to watch it with my friends, and we bought
it. Was incredible. It was incredible. I didn't.
And the third was the best fight of the three, correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
And
the second fight was the bloodiest and craziest, but the third fight
massacre.
The crazy thing is that Marquez was about to win that fight by decision. All he had to do was just not get knocked down in the 12th round, and somehow I don't know how Vasquez did it, man. Chi energy, man. He just called on this like.
He was never the same after that.
I mean, that's all his body had.
And they fought a fourth time, and that fourth fight should have never happened.
Shouldn't have. That was a cash grab. That was wrong. No, really, it was. It was. I don't recognize it. I swear to God, I don't recognize it.
Yeah. It's like a great trilogy. Count it, right?
I don't. No, I don't count it. I don't. I don't count
it. It was so
never
crazy.
happened.
But on that third fight, I tell you what, man. I came home, and the chick I was with at the time, I pop in the cassette or DVR maybe at this point in time I had, and she's like, "You're really just gonna watch this fight?" I'm like, "You have no idea how much I want to see this fight." My buddy screwed me out of the opportunity to watch this fight live, and I still don't know the result. I need to watch this fight right now. She's like, "You're an asshole." I'm like, "Okay, that all good. Like this is who I am."
True. Yeah.
You guys never went on another date, did you?
No, we broke up quickly after that. It didn't last much longer, and I was okay with it. But nowadays my wife, she's into it. She watches the boxing, and she's always asking questions, and sometimes it's crazy because like I'm so privileged, and we've been together 9 years now. That when she like researches things, she'll ask me, or even during a fight, and she'll ask me like really pertinent questions, and I'm like, she makes me think. I'm like, oh, how do I answer that? Because boxing is, let's face facts, guys, very complicated. With scoring, she's like, how does that happen? Like, what is this? What is this rule? And what's that? And you try to explain it, and it's like, even though you feel like you might be somewhat of an expert, it's almost impossible. It's like, well, what the hell is this belt now? Why do they have that? What the hell is the what is this regular champion? Like, what is
you got to say? Don't worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I say, don't even go there.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Go there. But Dougie, I mean, as always, a great time. Much love to you and your family.
Thank you so much. You not only do you run marathons, you do marathon podcasts as well.
They're always, I don't do short podcasts. It never happens that way. But you guys will chop this up in little pieces, I'm sure.
No, we're just gonna keep it as it is.
Well, keep the 2 hour if you want, but
I'll chop it.
You can take out little subjects if you want and put that out.
I love that.
It's just great overall just talking to you. You're somebody who's very respected in the boxing business, and for you to just last in this business as long as you have, I mean, that shows a lot of guts, just great longevity. It's definitely not an easy business to be involved in, but much success to you, which obviously you've had tons of success, and being
You froze there, Kev. Could you guys all hear me? All right, so here's what's up. Yeah, the last time me and Dougie did a show, what did it go? 3 hours and like 20 minutes?
I don't remember. I don't keep count. I just enjoy the conversation. That's all.
Dude, I always love talking to you. Kevin locked up there. Dougie, have a great day.
You too.
And I'll post the show to iHeart, Spotify, everywhere. Fine audio is heard, and also YouTube, and a lot of people will be looking forward to that.
All right, sounds good, guys.
Thank you, buddy.
Let's do it again.
Yes, anytime, man. I love it. Anytime.
Later.
All right, my man. All right, we're closing out. Johnny Sig, Kevin Perry just had on the great Dougie Fischer, editor-in-chief of Ring Magazine, and we'll be posting that show very, very soon for your